everyone. I just thought I'd have a play with the watercolour pencils today. I got both sets. There's about, I think there's 23 altogether. Sorry if that light's glaring a little bit. And I thought I'd show you on different kinds of paper. Now, Stampin' Up! Has 3 kinds of paper that are suitable. We have the fluid watercolour paper, the shimmery white, the basic white. Now the basic white, you probably already know, it's just a very smooth white cardstock. The shimmery white, I don't know if you can see that in the light, but there is a sparkling fleck to it. Maybe if I show the other side. There's a sparkly fleck to it. It's around about the same thickness and GSM as the basic white. The fluid watercolour paper is a thicker watercolour paper. There's 2 sides to it, obviously. This one has a little bit more tooth, and the tooth is just the texture of the paper. Now I'm going to just do a basic colouring with the pencils, and I've done it on 3 different kinds just to show you how they come out. They come out very, very different. So this is the shimmery, this is the basic white, and this is the fluid watercolour paper. And this is just basic colouring. We're not doing anything else with it, just basic colouring. So I'll go ahead and I'll start with the fluid watercolour paper. And I've stamped it in crumb cake. And I'm not sure if you can see it on the watercolour paper. It's very, very pale colour. It's the 2nd generation because I did not want it to be very dark, because what we're going to do is we're going to colour first and then stamp it with the Memento Black. And the reason being that sometimes the pencils can colour over the ink and distort your image a little bit. So I'm using the Painted Poppy set. This is the Painted Poppy set. It's on page 24 in the catalogue. I'll just show you all of that. Get that out of the way. It's on page 24 in the catalogue, and it's a lovely set. I've had this now for probably a couple of years, so it does have the dies. The other thing I want to show you are the watercolour pencils. And they're on page 126 in the catalogue. Now, as I said, there's 2 sets, assortment pack 1 and assortment pack 2. I got both because I like to have them all. So let's get going. And I always have a pencil sharpener. I like to have a nice sharp pencil when I'm doing this. And the secret to colouring is don't go too heavy in the beginning, because you know what, you can add more colour, but you can't take it away. So I'm using the Real Red, the Cherry Cobbler, the Real Red, and the basic grey. And they will mix to a certain extent, and I'm just going to show you very quickly. I won't do a whole flower of each, but I will show you how they turn out. So I found, because we've got a light outline, I found the easiest way to do this, I hope you can see this, is to do a little outline first, just so you know where you're going. And little circles, little soft circles. Okay, now these are very soft pencils. Now, it just depends the look you're going for, what you like. Some people love colouring in pencils. Some people don't like them so much, but anyway. So there's one basic petal. Now I'm taking the Cherry Cobbler, which is a darker shade, and because this petal is under that petal, this petal is under that petal, it's behind it, there will naturally be a darker colour there. So I'm just going through and just creating a bit of a shadow. And we've also got it darker towards the middle of the flower. So very, very lightly. And then back with the real red, very, very lightly. I'm just going to go between the two. And you'll see there seems to be no harsh lines there now between the two. So I'm just going to very, very softly continue over where I went before. Now the tooth or the texture on this paper does not let the colour go all the way. I can scrub really hard at it and do that, but I don't particularly like that look. Now this gives you a couple of different tones and shades. I'll just hold that up for you. Hopefully you can see that. So I'll just continue along. Now I found where these particular petals are that have overturned, I like to mark out the dark where it would be darker first. Just so I know where I'm going. Once you start colouring it in, you won't see those. Now this is, as I said, on the fluid watercolour paper. And okay, so now we can just begin with our real red. Very, very softly. Now we're going to overstamp this with the black memento, as you can see here. So it's quite forgiving that you might make mistakes or whatever. So this petal is also underneath that petal. So we want to put a bit of the darker colour there. Here's the real red again. So I want to emphasise that darker colour again, so I'm going to make it a little bit more prominent. Then I'm going to go back in with the real red and blend it. Try and create some, not so much of a distinct mark. Bear in mind these are watercolour pencils, they're very, very soft. These are not the type of pencils that you'd normally do a lot of colouring like this with. So when we overstamp that with black, you're going to see that none of that makes any difference. It looks like a bit of a mess at the moment. But once you stamp it with the black, it pops the colour. And it's quite forgiving actually. So I'll just do a couple more and then I will overstamp it and you can see what I'm speaking about. Okay, now I've done the grey in the middle. This stamp itself does do the black centre, but it leaves a lot of space. You might see it better in this one here. So the grey just kind of fills in that white space. So I'll just do that, and then I will stamp over it, and you can see the difference. Now my trick is to have your stamparatus already set up, and I stamped all of these using this same method. They go in this way. This is taped down. This is just a piece of cardstock that's had the same shape cut out of it. And this is black memento. Now memento is actually water-based, so you want to stamp over it afterwards if you're ever using any watercolour water or the toner pens or anything, the blender pens or anything like that. And you can see that what looked like a bit of a mess there now looks a little bit more complete. Now that is on the watercolour paper, so it's a very rough textured paper, but you might like that look. So we'll do the next one, which will be on the shimmery white. I'll just clean that off with my little chamois. Pop that out of the way. Okay, the shimmery white, and the textures of the paper are quite different, so I'd suggest that you would want to experiment yourself. I'm just going to sharpen this again because I like to have a bit of a sharper point on them. So we'll start again. We'll start up here again. Much smoother than the watercolour paper, but you can see there is a bit of a texture, and I think that's got something to do with the glittery finish of the paper. At small little circles and a very light touch. So we've done that now. I go back in with the cherry cobbler and just do a bit of dark towards the centre of the flower. And because this petal is behind that one, again, little circles. And back in with the real red. Just go between the two. Of course, you can leave highlights, and a highlight is like a lighter area, so you might want to have a bit of a highlight on this petal here. So we've left a bit of highlight there. So again, I'll go in with the darker this time, just so I know where it is. And this petal's behind this one. It's a horrible rainy day here in Sydney, and there is no better place to be than in your craft room colouring in poppies. I can tell you that. for nothing. The alternative is to watch movies, and I'm not in the mood to watch movies. So we want to bring that out a bit, the shape of that petal. And we're just going to blend those together. We'll do one more, we'll do the same amount, and then I'll overstamp that. This is to give you an idea of, and comparison, if you wanted to do this, which paper you'd like to go with, or which paper you think would be the best that suits your needs. But there are many ways to colour images in with Stampin' Up. This is just one of them. This is just normal coloured pencils, basically, like we used to use at school when we were kids. So create that a little bit darker. It doesn't make much sense as it is now until it's over-stamped and you can see the actual details. There we go. I'll colour in the grey centre. I mean, the grey centre, you can colour it in if you like, or you can leave it. At the end of the day, it's going to be over-stamped with black, so this is also good if you're making a lot of cards. I hope that's in frame. I'm sure it is. Okay. Okay, just make sure that's in. And it looks totally different with the black outline, and that's why I say, you know, don't worry too much. Don't worry too much till the end. Okay, so we've got those two, and now we're going to use the basic white. So we've got another one here. And this is quite a smooth cardstock. Okay. Again with the same little circles. I mean, it must be probably, you must be thinking, why am I sitting here watching some lady colour in? But if you don't know how to colour in, or how these pencils work, or what you expect from them, then that's what this little video is about. I mean, if you're thinking of buying them, at least you'll know what you're about to get. So there's the real red. Now I'm going to sharpen my cherry cobbler. It's good to have a decent point on it. So this one is underneath this petal here, so we want some dark around here. And we want some in the middle here. It's interesting the difference in the vibrancy also of the colouring, depending on how heavy you go. So back with the real red. And you can build up the colour to a certain extent. You know, I wouldn't say that you could keep adding indefinitely. You're going to get to the point where the pigment won't stick to its previous pigment that's on the page. But you're doing small areas, so there's a bit of shading. So we'll go back in with the cherry cobbler and just, you know, identify these darker areas. This is going to be darker because this petal is underneath this one. And it's also underneath this one. Now with all colouring pencils, once you start flattening the tooth of the paper, all paper has tooth. Some is just rougher or smoother than others. You're not going to be able to get any more colour on there because there's nothing for the colour to grab onto. So that's why we start off with very light, soft colouring in the beginning. So I'm going to go back and deepen that. And I think we might have just reached saturation point with that one. Doesn't want to go on anymore. Okay, third one. Identify that shadow. And have a bit of shadow down there. So this one obviously is on top of that one, so we don't need that darker colouring down the side there of the petal, but the petal is actually turning over itself, so there will be some shadow required under there. There'll be some darker colouring required in the centre, near the centre of the flower. So just go back in with our cherry cobbler. It's a very loud helicopter flying past at the moment. As long as it keeps flying past, I'll be fine. I suppose you guys can hear that, it's pretty loud. So we're just going to back with the real red, and we're just basically smoothing out that colour. Okay, do the grey in the middle. This is a very good stamp to colour because there's a lot of open space for you to colour and for you to get the hang of shading and things like that. So have a look at that before I stamp it. That's almost what we call no line colouring, because there's no actual lines. And you can do that too. I'm not very good at it. Not something I've actually mastered, so I'm sticking with this. So sometimes the pencils can leave a waxy feel to the paper, and that's why I overstamp afterwards, just so that the detail of the stamp isn't lost in the colouring pencil. So we'll just have a little look at that close. And there is a bit of a bloom left from the pencils, and that's a characteristic of pencils, okay? You can tell that it's handmade with pencil if it's got that bloom on it. So there's a finished one, and I think I actually went back in with a really sharp pencil and put some extra detail in, which you can do, or you don't have to if you don't want to. So very light flicking motion, just like that, and you'd be surprised how much that adds to it. So you can see. Of course, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. This one I can do the same thing there. So what I'm doing is I'm doing like a flick like this, pencil to paper, flicking up, and it almost goes to nothing. And I'll show you on the plain white here. It almost goes to nothing. But when it's on its own colour, it just adds just a bit of texture. So there you can see that, I hope. And I'll do it on this one as well, just to be consistent. Although this one is quite dark because it grabs so much pigment, because the paper is so rough, it's a little bit hard to see. But it's there. And I'm going to do a couple more videos showing other ways you can use these watercolour pencils. Of course, they match with our inks and papers and ribbon and accessories. So once you finish a card, you can complete that look. Okay, happy crafting, everybody. And I'll put out another video in the next little while. Thank you. Bye.